One of the best aspects of record collecting is regularly stopping at stores and record fairs to hunt for cool and interesting albums. I also enjoy the interactions with dealers and fellow enthusiasts. The in-person experience is fantastic. Absolutely no complaints there. But on YouTube, it's an entirely different matter. Naturally, with the web and the multitude of available resources, record collecting has never been easier with so much information at your fingertips. And as my interest in collecting records grew into a near obsession, I began looking for informative and entertaining vinyl-themed podcasts and YouTube channels. And I discovered that there are plenty of those around to choose from. Eventually, I stumbled upon what is referred to as the vinyl community on YouTube, or the VC. And I thought, that's pretty cool, an online group of passionate individuals who are devoted to buying, selling, collecting, discussing, and debating vinyl records. But as time passed, I started to see and hear things on the vinyl community YouTube channels that made me scratch my head and say, really? Do I really have beefs with the VC? I don't know. I suppose they're more like quibbles. So let's start with the first one. If you're going to properly enjoy your record collection, you obviously need a turntable, as well as a cartridge, phono preamp, amplifier, and speakers. Don't mention headphones to me. If you only listen to records with headphones, you are doing it all wrong. This "it's all about the music" thing that many in the VC go on about is nonsense. If you just want to talk about the merits of recordings of a particular artist or albums or tracks, yes, it is all about the music. But if you're discussing a physical medium like records or tapes or even CDs, it's also about the gear. Particularly if you are discussing audiophile pressings and those pricey hot stampers that you'll need to have some decent audio components to go with them. And if you don't, you're wasting your money, in my opinion. It's sort of like watching a 4K HDR movie on an old 19-inch Zenith tube TV. You know what gets me into a record playing frenzy? Bringing home a newly acquired turntable or phono cartridge or phono preamp. And, listening to my old records with different hi-fi components can be a surprising and often thrilling experience. So it's really not only just about the music, it can be about the gear as well. A couple of years ago, the Mofi controversy became a hot topic in the VC when it was revealed that Mobile Fidelity Sound Labs, one of the original audiophile reissue labels, didn't tell their customers that for years there's been a digital step in the production of their analog master tape-based releases. Did anybody notice? Not really. Did the record sound real good? The general consensus was yes. This admission by Mofi resulted in much outrage, anger, and hand-wringing among the analog purists and led to a ridiculous class action lawsuit. And finding out how the tasty sausage was created made them very cross indeed. So then, did they use the original analog master tapes? Has now become the de rigueur question among the dogmatists when considering reissues. I'm a supporter of free market capitalism and believe that goods are worth what people are willing to pay for them. And the VC does spend an extraordinary amount of time discussing the new deluxe and very limited edition audiophile reissues that are priced upwards of $150 for an album release, not a box set. And I've never spent $100 on a single album, and especially a reissue. I just don't believe the value is there for me. And I would certainly not consider a single album that is split up into two 45 RPM discs.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
Hey, I enjoy the Dan as much as anyone, and I own most of their albums. But the VC has been obsessed with them for years. And the recent round of reissues of the Steely Dan catalog has spawned a flood of even more videos about Album backstories, reviews, and analysis with no sign of subsiding. I'm serious. Go on YouTube and search Steely Dan vinyl. I think it's actually putting me off listening to their albums. Growing up back in the day, did we care who mastered the albums? No, it's like the credits at the end of a film. No one except the individuals in the crew or their families bothered to read them. We never read what's written in the dead wax, and most of us didn't even know what mastering was. But those talented individuals worked in obscurity for decades, cranking out lacquer after lacquer just to make it possible for us to all pick up the latest Aerosmith album at our local Sam Goody's. It's great now with the internet and forums and Facebook groups and YouTube, we can geek out about those gifted engineers, many of which sadly have passed on or retired. And the ones who are still with us and active appear to be utterly bemused that they are now fawned over and treated like rock stars by the VC. Come on, guys. They work in a lab with a big, heavy cutting lathe, a tape machine, and push buttons and twiddle knobs and look at VU meters. Is it really that exciting? Yes, it is important, and we owe much to their extraordinary talents. They have now emerged from animosity to be interviewed and peppered with questions like, what was it like mastering the first Cars album? Oh, well, Steve, I don't really recall that one. It was a long time ago, and I was mastering hundreds of albums a year back then. Did you use an analog or digital source for that album? They could have been analog, but digital was becoming very popular back in the 80s. I can't tell you for sure. What conditions were the master tapes in? Oh, they were in great shape. Or, they were kind of rough and it was a challenge to get them to sound good. We had to bake the tapes. Did you get to meet the band? Nah, the artists pretty much never visited the mastering lab. You can tell that the engineers being interviewed are trying to come up with entertaining stories, and sometimes they do, but on occasion they appear to struggle. It's not like they were on the road with the band or even in the studio during the recording. I mean, the stories behind designing the album covers, album covers are way more interesting. Did you see that new Hypnosis documentary? It's great. Record collectors can be an odd lot. Some never clean their LPs, and others can get a bit OCD. I watched a YouTuber open a new album on camera and was horrified to see the record was in a plain white paper inner sleeve. Rather than slide the disc out of the inner sleeve and risk what he described as the potential of a light surface scuff on the vinyl from the paper, he tore the inner sleeve open in order to remove the record. I don't know, that seems a bit over the top and ridiculous to me. To me, sliding a record out of a paper sleeve is not abuse because they've always been used since the beginning of record packaging. I really don't have a beef here, but from my experience, original copies of albums that I enjoy from the 60s, 70s, and 80s will 9 times out of 10 sound better to my ears than 21st century reissues. They generally have sonic qualities that are more dynamic with extra vim and vigor. And over the past few years, I've purchased lots of remastered reissues, and I found them to sound pretty good, and I've been satisfied with the product. But that's until I started searching out original pressings, and after doing numerous A/B comparisons with the reissues, I'm like, nope, that's no longer good enough. I'm sticking with the OG. Goodbye, reissue. A few excellent reissues sound very close to the originals, and from time to time I encounter a reissue that actually sounds better. But that's kind of a rare thing. Yes, I get it. Selling new records is vital to keeping the vinyl resurgence going. Record companies don't make a penny when we buy used records. If it's not profitable, they'll cease pressing them. So promoting reissues and new releases needs to continue. And I suppose without reissues, the VC would have far less to talk about. A few months ago, I watched a YouTuber state that he sticks to reissues only because he finds any pops or surface noise on a used record to be utterly unbearable. I mean, nobody likes an excessively noisy record, but I'll trade a few pops for a more gutsy and energetic original copy any day. Last year I thought, perhaps I could join in on the fun. So I reached out and appeared as a guest panelists on a few of the VC broadcasts, but I found it to be kind of boring, and like many panels, they were dominated by a few verbose individuals who did their best to dominate the proceedings by interrupting, talking over, and rambling on about trivialities that I had zero interest in. So I stopped all that. Anyone could start a YouTube channel, but like many communities, being accepted into the cool crowd has its obstacles because those groups can have a bit of an elitist undercurrent. I still watch and enjoy vinyl community YouTube channels, and I'd like to give a shout out to a few of my favorites, like Tim at the University of Vinyl and Norman Masloff, or Mazzy, and yes, even Michael Fremer on the Tracking Angle channel. What I enjoy is that they are entertaining and educational. As I mentioned in my last video, please help me reach my goal of 20,000 subscribers by hitting the subscribe and like button now. That would be so awesome, and I thank you in advance. So that's it for me, and don't forget to enjoy your own devices and records. Bye.